I need to start with Tencent and what that means, I guess, against the context of what you are asking. Are you looking for something similar from India, basically shutting off the market to everything that's not India?
Well, not really. I mean, I wouldn't say that is what we are looking for in India. But what we are certainly looking for in India is a more level playing field with respect to creating India's own Alibaba or India's own Tencent or India's own Google and Facebook, which, as you know, do not exist as of today, and that creates a problem because in my view, that means that if you have an open market, but a market which is still early, which is India is, then it can be very easily captured by companies which have $500 billion or $1 trillion market caps, because it's chump change for them to invest their technologies and their capital and win in markets like search or messaging or even payments or financial services. So I think there's a fair bit of thinking that Indian government needs to do in order to build its own tech ecosystem with its own local champions, and that's what really I have been asking for, and a few of the startups which are in India. I mean, if you look at our space like payments, for example, we compete with companies which are like Alibaba or Google or Walmart, and honestly, these companies are far too bigger and are far ahead in the technology curve. So while we continue to stand there, I think India needs to have its policy right in order to promote local champions for the long term, because that's the only way to get to build a tech ecosystem, and that's what by the way Europe is trying to do. That's why, by the way, China has done 20 years ago and continues to do so. What all we are asking is why is India trying to be the open market that it is today?
It is a good thought experiment, isn't it? Imagining how big Tencent and Alibaba would be if you had competition there, like Google or what have you. The other issue, though, that comes up is not just Chinese companies. You have a lot of big U.S. firms. A lot of these companies backed a lot of startups in India, and arguably without that money, the tech scene in India wouldn't be as thriving. So it's coming off as if you can't bring your business, but please give us your money. How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I don't think that is true. If you look at, large U.S. corporations, and I'm specifically talking about corporations, they haven't invested in local startups. I mean, there is just a handful of, you can count them in one hand in terms of number of startups which have been backed by these giants. Mostly, they have actually tried to build everything themselves. I mean, you look at Amazon, it's built e-commerce by itself, and it's probably number one right now, or at least very close number two to Flipkart in India, which is owned by Walmart. Google operates by itself, Facebook operates by itself, WhatsApp operates by itself. Where are the local startups that they backed? I mean, I haven't heard of any of them. What you're talking about is venture capital and investors. Like, I think, why China, I'll give you an example of China. While China was closed technically to the global US corporations, firms like Sequoia Capital or all the major US venture capital firms have thrived and given outstanding returns by investing in local ecosystem, in the local startups. In fact, what I would say is that, because the market is so open, because we allow the US and Chinese companies to come directly, the VCs are actually scared of backing many of those startups because, they know that what if Google comes in this? What if Amazon comes in this? What if Facebook, comes in this? So what that really means is actually all that VCs are looking for are returns, and returns are much, much better possible if you allow, startups from India to thrive. And from that, there is no dichotomy there. Actually, you can get financial investors to come and make money by investing in local startups, and foreign direct investment should welcome, but not necessarily, means that U.S. corporations need to be winner in every segment.
Bipin Prid, if you start erecting walls, putting bans, are you then also putting a cap, putting a lid on the global ambitions of tech companies?
So, you have a very good question, but I think, it's a very theoretical question. Is there any company from India who's dominant or going to be dominant in tech, in the next 1 or 2 years or even 5 years? I think what you have to understand is, companies like Google were born in early 90s, right? And that Google was formed out of 30, 40 years of innovation after Second World War. In China, the manufacturing of chips started in late 90s or 80s, and then the tech revolution feeded off that. And then you have the kinds of ByteDance or JD or PDD, which have come from the back of Alibaba and Tencent. So you need an ecosystem where you first have a wave of companies which can go list themselves, become big, become $10 billion, $30 billion corporations, which then invest and grow the local ecosystem. In India, for example, we had a fantastic opportunity with a company like Flipkart. It's today, it's not an Indian company anymore. It's owned by Walmart. So, where are the rest of the Flipkarts in India? And, I think my point being that every country in this world today has to look for itself. And that's what America is doing. That's what China is doing. If we feel that, we can be somehow idealistic in this approach, I don't think that is possible. We should be welcoming foreign capital. We should necessarily not be protectionist, but at the same time, we should give enough space for local champions to emerge. That's all we are asking for.
Bipin Prid, does it mean that you will not be receiving any investments from a Chinese VC, Chinese investor potentially?
Well, I think, what I ask for is more generic in nature, not specifically, against China, but, with China specifically right now, because of, what has been happening at the border between India and China, relations have become not that great. So I think there is a special focus on the Chinese companies and also the Chinese investors. So I don't know how long that will last or how much of a long-term phenomenon it is going to be. But I think that can't be the basis, in my view, of a long-term policy. A long-term policy should not be against a particular country, whether it is China or US. A long-term policy for India should be for local champions to emerge. Now, foreign direct investment is something that India needs. India needs more capital, and that should be, in my view, welcome all across. If it comes from Chinese as well, it should be welcome. Of course, there can be issues around, the source beneficiary of the funding and who are the actual investors and connects to the government, etc. I think those things, once proper checks are in place, I believe there's no reason why Chinese investors should not be investing in India.
I'd love to get your thoughts on this next question. It's almost a philosophical question. You look at what's happening between the U.S. and China, and part of, I guess, what you want to do is sort of close the door and protect the local industry. But isn't it as well, the internet was meant and designed and structured primarily to bridge borders, to bring walls down, to connect many people regardless of where they are. And partly what's happening, do you think we're headed in that direction of it's almost conflicting with the very purpose of what the internet should be?
So yes, I think what you are saying is the idealistic version of how internet is perceived by many people. But if you look at a little deeper, in reality, that is not the case. In reality, internet was always America-centric, right? I mean, starting from the domain names where the domains get registered to everything on the internet. It started in US. You cannot deny it. And so internet was born in US. Of course, it spread all across. And because it was born there, and because there was a finance industry which supported the growth of internet and technology in the early 90s, the boom happened. Americans were the first in innovating new business models and new companies in this space. And the Chinese recognized that and said that, we are not ready for this. We need to have our own ecosystem. If we just have a very open ecosystem, then we will never have, any companies which are. You can argue it was from the point of view of control or surveillance. That's, I think, one cynical view of it. The other view of it from a long-term economic benefit of China, it was, in my view, it was a right decision. And they allowed the foreign investors. They created some wall in terms of, the foreign corporations. I don't think India needs to go to that extreme. We are an English-speaking country. We are well connected to the global world. Yet at the same time, maybe we should look back and see why in every segment, the only companies that exist in those segments are Americans. So, I mean, one is philosophically, yes, you could argue that. But the reality is that in practice, this has long-term implications, not just for security, not just for geopolitics, but also for the economic growth of the country, because we know that, the biggest corporations of the future are going to be tech corporations. So if your market is given away cheaply to the trillion-dollar corporations, then how are you going to get your economy growing for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years?